Before we go into this panel, I introduce it. We're going to ask Jesse to come up and talk very briefly for 2 minutes about a campaign he's literally just initiating in Bristol University, which makes for a great opener about where we're going to go on to in the panel and discuss. So without further ado, Jesse, please enlighten us.
Yeah, sure. Hiya, thanks. It has just kicked off for the students, but it's worth mentioning that it's been going on for a couple of years from other activist groups. We are about to have a panel discussion on movement unity, and in the spirit of unity, I'd like to invite you all to a march through the University of Bristol's campus on the 4th of November. I'm a student there, and the student body and thousands of test animals really need your help right now. 2 years ago, the student body voted against the use of the forced swim test at our university, which for 25 years has been needlessly terrifying and killing thousands of test animals. And 25 years in, it's improved the lives of 0 human patients. So from October, the students will be defending their vote by taking action at our university every single week. And it's a great time for it. Lots of Bristol's politicians are vegan and against animal testing. Bristol's activist groups are aware of it and are agitated by the test. So the time is really now. But on top of all that, we need your help. So on the 4th of November, please join us for a march through the campus. A coalition of animal justice organizations and individuals will be taking part. We'll march through the campus to the lab where the animals are killed, and we'll demand that the university does the right thing for the animals, for the students, and for the patients who desperately deserve better research. So thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. And that's really important, because what we have here is, people who really want to get on and do these things and achieve them. We've had an animal movement for, well, in its modern form, I'd say around about 50, 60 years. I'd say 1963, Hunt Sab's founded, animal protection group. And we've obviously go way back, to last century for anti-vivisection movements, very much tied in with the suffragette movement. It was a fabulous history of the growth and development of animal rights. But in that time, we've had a mishmash. And there's no doubt that you come into the movement, there is not one clear single message being delivered. There's not even one movement. We've got effectively a minimum 2 movements. And one is promoting the use of plant-based options. And the other is demanding justice and seeking total liberation for animals. Within that animal movement, again, we've got animal protection, we've got animal welfare, we've got animal rights, we've got animal liberation. So, there is a lot of contradictions in our movement. And what we've seen over the years is just a number of groups grow up and, they sort of fill a void. And that has, in one respect, been fabulous, but in another respect, quite confusing, and has also led to quite a lot of discord. So I know that anybody who's been vegan a while will know there's a whole history of discord between us all. In recent years, especially in the last 2 years, I'd say there's been a real move to collaborate. And that's really the point of this panel. And I would stress at this point, as I mentioned about Animal Think Tank and Animal Rising, all the groups are showing signs of really wanting to collaborate. And I think there's a couple of factors. One is the climate crisis really demanding that we act. And then I think there's another one, we've been doing this a long time, and it hasn't always worked. It hasn't really always achieved our aims. And what we haven't yet done is really become a mass movement. And that is what we are beginning to see coming about. The work of the Animal Think Tank has been fundamental in that. But that's perhaps a longer term, looking at research and looking at narrative change and how we can, perhaps get a better messaging together. In the meantime, there's a real sense of urgency to collaborate and really achieve a better result, if you like. So I'll point out at this point, this is not something new. This is something that's already happening. It's already coming about. And part of the point of this panel is to highlight some of these and encourage people where we can do better and where we can do more of this. But also, importantly, to have a look at what might be holding us back, what might be stopping that, what are some of the issues that we may want to overcome. And that's really important because, we are in a very difficult economic climate. We are also seen a downturn in activism this last few years with COVID, obviously. So it's really important that as we re-emerge and become a really strong, united movement, that we listen and articulate any issues, and we're not shy to talk about these issues. But very much what we are doing is looking at it from a solutions-based perspective. We're not interested in arguing. We're not really interested in falling out. What we're interested in is identifying any issues and then getting over them and finding solutions. So on that note, I'm very, very honoured to be joined by 4 illustrious campaigns. And tomorrow we're going to have another 4, which is really exciting. And this work is ongoing. So we will be doing more at VegfestUK London Olympia in November. And if we are back here, we'll be doing more next year in Bristol. This is ongoing. It's work in progress. So the first thing I'm going to ask our 4 panellists to do is, apart from introduce yourselves, and we have Animal Aid at the end, we have plant-based universities in the middle, we have Animal Think Tank in the middle, and we have We the Free here. All 4 groups really representing different aspects. Some are working on individual change, some are working on system change, some are working to promote animal liberation, some are working to promote growth of plant-based options, and we are looking at how we can collaborate, find common ground. And to begin with, Fiona, you're sat at the end. So Fiona Pereira from Animal Aid. Animal Aid have been going, I think, 47 years now, maybe 48 years.
Yep.
And I will say, have always been the most staunch supporters of VegFest since the beginning. So I've got to hand them credit, and I've always known Animal Aid to be particularly progressive in supporting other groups, grassroots, and a fabulous organisation. So Fiona, if you'd like to introduce yourself and then tell us about some of the recent collaborations that Animal Aid have already been doing.
Hello, I'm Fee. I work at Animal Aid. I've been working there for quite a few years now. We started as a group that was campaigning against the use of animals in animal experiments, and we've kind of come full circle because one of our most recent collaborations is with an organisation, with a company called Accelerate, which is bringing about an end to the use of LD50 tests. As Animal Aid's grown over the years, we've taken on a number of other campaigns. We promote veganism and cruelty-free living. We also have some other, I suppose what you'd think of as being slightly more niche campaign areas, like we campaign against horse racing, for example. We've been doing a lot of work on anti-snaring stuff, and we work with lots of different organisations because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. We all want to see an end to the way in which animals are treated and abused. We have to keep working together. So what we try and do is we work where we can with other groups. Sometimes they have slightly different messaging to us, which means that we can't sort of overtly support them sometimes, for example, but there's lots of different collaborations going on across lots of different areas. And a lot of those things are just about discussing issues, that how are we going to do this, how are we going to do that? And it doesn't mean that all those groups are necessarily going to be taking part in what the end result will be, but it means that we can sort of work through the nitty-gritty of it. For example, we work quite a lot on the anti-shooting stuff and anti-snaring stuff with the League Against Cruel Sports. And there's even, I was talking to Tim about this the other day, because there's even organisations where we probably have nothing in common on paper, but there are some good people in those organisations who want to help, and sometimes they might get some information or something they think will be useful to us, and they can't use it, but they'll give it to us. So it's brilliant, but we can only do that by having friends, by having personal contacts in organisations, by knowing that we can pick up the telephone and text somebody and go, can you help with this thing? And that's why, and can I just say thank you for putting on VegFest before we go any further, because this is how it works. This is how we meet people. This is how we get together. This is, you've been doing this, and it's the most fantastic vehicle for bringing us all together and helping us discuss things. So, thank you to you.
a privilege, and I'm proud and honoured to be doing it still.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Shall I shut up now and
No,
pass
that's
it along?
brilliant. So Fiona, I'm just going to highlight, actually, this is a classic example. Fiona mentioned the collaboration with League Against Cruel Sports to get through the petition on the snares. Now, I think we all know to get 100,000 petition to get the government to look at it is a big deal. But they've done it, and I think you didn't do it the first time, and you improved your collaboration, and you did get it through, and now we've seen Wales ban snares, we're seeing Scotland close to banning snares.
And this is a really good example. So with the petition, I'm not ashamed to say that I just begged people in other organisations, people I'm friends with on Facebook, I just begged and asked for favours and said, can you do this, please, can you do this, please, can you do this? And that's what got us over the line. It's by all those other groups helping us. We couldn't have done it alone. We couldn't have done it without all our supporters and all their supporters and everybody helping to share the message. That's the thing that does it.
So, and also just to mention again, Accelerate, how you're working with, Accelerate to actually introduce non-animal testing procedures.
So we gave some funding to Accelerate, who are an amazing vegan laboratory, and I'd really encourage you to go and have a look at their work, because Carol Treasure, who set it up, is the most phenomenal person. And I think that what she's done is incredible, because in amongst all the awful stuff that's happening in the world, she just made a decision that she was going to do one thing. And she was like, I'm going to get rid of the LD50 test, which is just the most horrible, archaic, cruel test. And she just focused solely on that. And she did it. And she just did it. No, it's amazing. And she, to block out all the noise of all the other horrible things that are going on, and not to become distracted, and just to hone in on this one thing and think, I'm going to get one thing done in my lifetime, and that's going to be it. And she's lovely. She's absolutely lovely. Go and have a look at all the stuff she does. She's so fantastic.
Well done, Fee. So there's a really good example of some really good, successful collaborations that we can have a look at. Nathan, you represent today Plant-Based Unis. I know you do work with Animal Rising, but I think you've co-founded Plant-Based Unis, am I correct? So I would imagine, I know, but I will hear Nathan, I'm sure, validate this, that there is a real desire amongst people of your age and generation especially to really get a move on here.
Yeah, absolutely. So Plant-Based Universities is an Animal Rising campaign. We're not shy of, bigging up that connection. It's actually helped us in universities quite a lot. Sometimes they get a little bit scared that we're going to do something rogue, but we haven't so far. But yeah, for anyone that doesn't know, Plant-Based Universities began in 2021 in 3 universities, King's College London, University College London and Warwick, with this really simple premise. Universities are where we have research on especially the climate and ecological crisis, not only the research but also the solutions to it. So plant-based food system being chief among those. So campaigning for that in universities, in university catering, and achieving 7 wins so far, where we've had 7 student unions commit to going 100% plant-based in the last year, which is incredible. Kind of a network of now probably somewhere from 200 to 300 students across the UK working on this as well. We just had recent summer camps where we had a whole weekend of training for these students as well. But talking more about collaboration, I wasn't sure if I was going to mention this today, but I might as well. But don't go and run and tell the press about it, because we've agreed that The Guardian has an exclusive on this. But we've spent the last 2 months building an open letter of academics and notables, including people from every single organisation represented on this panel, now at somewhere between 800 and 900 signatures, including people like Chris Packham, Etienne Stott, Caroline Lucas, the MP for Brighton Pavilion. And I think that's shown that when there is something that's winning and something that's such a clear goal, the movement can unite behind it in the ways that they're good at. So whilst we're campaigning for system change, We the Free are doing their street outreach in the best way that they know how. People like Serge and Ed, Earthling Ed, are going in the best way they know how. But it's all climbing the same mountain from different sides, so to speak.
I've been really impressed by the way Plant-Based Unis have been able to get a real move on here. So I'm going to ask you honestly, I'm going to ask you to give us an honest answer, but you're a safe answer. As somebody who's come in perhaps to the movement with PBU in the last couple of years, What's your opinion about the current state of collaboration between the main groups? Do you think you've had the support? Have you found doors open? Have you been impressed?
I think there's been a real sea shift in 2023, especially. I think because, when it was Animal Rebellion, now Animal Rising, we're using a lot of predominantly climate messaging. There was quite a lot of friction, let's be honest, with the traditional animal rights movement. But I think we've learned from that, but also the animal rights movement has learned from that. And also, almost more importantly, the climate movement has learned a hell of a lot from that as well. I've heard people say that back in the day, Extinction Rebellion, maybe 5 people in that office were vegans, but now 95% of the people I've met in Just Stop Oil are vegans. They will promote Animal Rising and they will talk about the animals as well. So we've managed to really drag the environmental movement along and also have really productive conversations on the animal side as well.
Fabulous. Well, I'm super impressed and inspired by people. Moving on to also a new group, which is relatively new, last few years, and that's Animal Think Tank. And again, this is people. One of the most incredible experiences I had, I'm just going to share this actually, was I went to this Animal Think Tank get-together back in February. And having been vegan 40 years or so, I guess I feel like, I know a bit about it. And I found myself being in front of somebody presenting who had been vegan a few weeks. And there was Beth, who sat here, who was stood up and really guiding us through, like a whole load of us. So some of us had been knocking around a long time. And here was Beth. And I just found it so inspirational that somebody who's literally been vegan for a month or two or something could come in and come up with so much interesting stuff. And it's just inspirational. So I'm thrilled that there's people probably a third of my age who are leading the way now. And Animal Think Tank, Natalie, are a group that is really quite unique at the moment. Tell us a little bit more about your collaborations.
Yeah, sure. Actually, I kind of want to name check you. I hope this doesn't embarrass you, Beth. But when we were recruiting for Animal Think Tank, we wanted to be broad-based. We wanted to reflect mainstream society. And we actually advertised and said, we want non-vegans coming to work for us. You bring perspectives that are valued, and you joined as a non-vegan, and you do bring a lot of different perspectives. But I think a lot of people couldn't understand why we were taking that approach. So just saying it's recognizing that we can build unity with different people, different groups who seem like they have maybe even different ideologies from us, and we can still find common ground, and we're working together. And so just wanted to kind of lift that up. But Animal Think Tank has been around for only 5 years, so still kind of in our infancy. As the name suggests, we're a think tank. We're still really in our research phase. So we are a social movement think tank. We're wanting to build a social movement that is broad-based, and we're also really kind of looking at the ecology of our movement, so seeing what we already have, where there might be gaps, how we can collaborate, how we can really unify as a movement. So that is really important for us. And Beth and I, we're focused on narrative, and that's the idea of building narrative unity as a movement. And we're really inspired by other social movements, other campaigns. Our big inspiration for narrative is Freedom to Marry, because they, through shifting their narrative, through building unity within the LGBT movement, they won marriage equality in 50 states in 11 years. And it's we can bring about huge change, uniting together. If we have a great strategy, we have great comms, that isn't enough if we don't have unity. So that is the key piece, and I'm really happy to be here on this panel talking about this.
Thank you, Natalie. Well done. And I have to say that was a light bulb moment for me, the Freedom to Marry campaign. If any of you are unfamiliar with the Freedom to Marry campaign, which I'll be honest, I was. Although I found a social media post that I made when they passed that. I think it was 2015. I posted up, was celebrating, and there it was in my memories. It's that was only 7-8 years ago. The Freedom to Marry campaign is worth having a look at. Have a look at it. I think Animal Think Tank, you've got stuff about that in your... So you go to ATT and have a look. But that was a phenomenal campaign. And really what it's saying is, the people came together and they looked at the messaging, they researched, they looked at their strategy, and they started working together, and they achieved in an incredibly short time an incredible victory. And we, within the animal movement and the plant-based movement, can really learn some lessons from that. So that's a light bulb moment for me. I'd love to share that with you, but thank you for that, Natalie. Sash, you are representing We the Free. Now, We the Free is pretty clear what you do. You're vegan outreach, you're out there, you're talking to people on individual change, you've got quite a clear remit. Tell us more about We the Free, We the Free, but also again about, collaborations. How have you been able to collaborate? I mean, you've got a huge one, for example, with the National Animal Rights Day. Nod, not Nom. National Animal Rights Day is one of the biggest collaborations in the movement today. And Sasha, you're a big part of that, I believe.
Hi, thank you. It was a beautiful introduction, and I'm actually glad that you mentioned the words collaborations and partnerships, because I mentioned that a lot in my speech here that I've prepared. So anyway, my name is Sash, and I am from We the Free, and my role within the organization is to help the organization grow, but grow not necessarily size, but mature as a movement. So I'm glad we're here, gathered together to start this process. So We the Free stands for we, as we together have an absolute obligation to help those who are not. We started collaboration, I think, in 2023, actually. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Our Planet, there's two. They're the people behind National Animal Rights Day. I think to date, that was our biggest collaboration. And we held the event in 156 locations globally. I believe, and then 18 of them in the UK. So we're hoping to grow that as well. What we do on the ground is we offer support, mainly with funding. We offer support in terms of workshops to start the small teams of activists locally, to get them off the ground. We offer them support in terms of the equipment, and we run monthly workshops, etc. So that although we are a global charity, we still would like the smaller teams feel like grassroots organizations, so they're in full control of what they do, and they have full autonomy as long as they are in line with our values. And that's doing activism, street activism for the animals. But that does not stop there. This year, we also started collaborating with political parties. I know it's a very controversial subject for some. So one of them is PACMA. It's a Spanish animal rights political party. And we now got another one, which is a European Greens. They're very big political party. So we're collaborating with them together with PETA, together with Animal Save Movement, and with the Free. And we're going to be holding a global event on the 4th of November against the first octopus farm that will the construction is due to start next year, and that will take place in Las Palmas and Gran Canaria in Spain. So I think after our Planet Earth 2, that will probably be our biggest collaboration. And there are risks, obviously, we've taken because we collaborating and partnered up with political parties. So we are completely apolitical as an organization. However, we all working towards the same goal, and I think that's the aim of, I'm guessing, this panel here as well. So thank you very much, and may I also express tremendous gratitude to everyone who was there from the very beginning. You paved the way and made the vegan movement what it is today. Thank you.
Thank you, Sash. Thank you all our panelists. So, yes, a round of applause. let's be true, you know, there's so much work goes on, and let's just have a little shout out for those volunteers. I'm sure we've got a few in the audience, people who do a lot of the heavy lifting, they do a lot of work, they don't get much thanks and praise. In fact, probably the opposite, they probably get moaned at on social media for something awful, but the volunteers and grassroots have made up the backbone of this movement since day one, so shout out for all the foot soldiers. So we're going to now look at briefly what have we got in plans. So let's have some positive news. What's on the horizon? You know, in terms of collaborating, working together, projects. Fee.
We've got our Universities Challenged campaign, which was launched last year or this year. I'm not entirely sure how much work went into the back end of it. Which is looking at the animal experiments that are done in universities and trying to expose those and then draw people in from those universities so we can start campaigning against it and empowering people and getting together with people and having better links with people who, like you said, people who are on the ground doing it, and any support that we can give to those people, we're going to try our hardest to do that. Snaring, Wales, that's one gone. Scotland's next, going to be collaborating with One Kind in Scotland. They're taking the lead on it because they're based in Scotland, but we're going to be pushing as hard as we can to get a snaring ban in Scotland and then just pointing the finger at England and saying, come on, everyone else has done it. What about you? That's just a couple off the top of my head. We collaborate with, we get together with groups during when the major horse racing events take place, because there's lots and lots of activists on the ground who are doing amazing work going down to race courses. We provide them with materials and data and stuff like that they need. There's a fantastic group in Devon, for example, that works tirelessly against the racing industry. So we have very, very close contact with them. But I think, we were talking about this on the phone the other day, and just to sort of slightly go off the subject, it's just, I think that we need to find a way where we can just work as much as we can, as hard as we can, when the opportunities, sometimes the messaging is different, and one of the problems, I guess, is that not the same. There's different ways of communicating with different people because everybody has, as a stupid example, sorry, I'm completely all over the place now. As a stupid example, one of my really good friends who hadn't ever been vegan went vegan after A, adopting a stray cat, and B, watching a program on giraffes mourning their dead. That's not a likely path that I would have ever set out. So it's just to sort of like think about, there are different ways of like talking with people, and we need to just really keep working together. But we have lots of exciting things in the pipeline, but we're just we're going to keep pushing as hard as we can. But events like this are so important for bringing us together, and so we can meet people from other groups and talk about what shall we do, what can we do together, because we need to. I'm really, really passionate about this. I was talking to Josephine earlier, actually. I'm sorry, I'm completely off subject here. Anyway, I was talking to Josephine earlier, and I was saying when I was at college, it was amazing because there was loads of different groups who were all campaigning on completely different issues, but they all supported each other. We all supported one another and turned up to each other's events because we had one common enemy, who was Margaret Thatcher, and was doing her utmost to destroy the entire universe. And we were all helping each other, because even if those people weren't necessarily vegan yet in those groups or whatever, we just knew that we had to get together because we had to make a change, So we're sort of coming, I feel like we're coming a bit more like into that time again, with different movements who are trying to be more supportive of each other and start conversations and stuff like that. I'm really wibbling. Shall I just shut up?
You mentioned Margaret Thatcher brought us all together. Something similar happened in the USA, actually, in the year 2000, when George Bush got elected. Overnight, he managed to unite all the green and ecological campaigners who, in the 90s, had all pretty much badly fallen out and were barely talking to each other. Suddenly, George Bush has got elected, and they all came together and started talking and working together. I go back, obviously, to those Thatcher days. I was campaigning from 1980 1980. And I remember absolutely that, we really were a tribe of one. And then, of course, the rave and house music came along at the end of the 80s, and that brought us all even further together. So Nathan, you've been doing plant-based universities literally just last month, because we're September. August, you had all these summer camps. So you were really having a collaboration between different universities. What's next?
So next for us is more of the same. And I think a lot of our work is in the environmental space and trying to drag the environmental space into kind of our way of seeing things. So we're now part of the Education Climate Coalition. We're the only animal group in there. Everyone else is just fossil fuels, divestment, fossil-free careers, that sort of thing. So we're really forcing the animal message into that space as well, which is really important. But also looking ahead is building events and settings where panels like this can exist with students and with academics. So last Thursday, we hosted an event where we had Animal Aid were there, the Humane League UK were there, but we also brought academics into that space as well, just to kind of trial run to see, does this work? And what we're looking to do is take that model into the future where we can have, hundreds of people coming together for these events with the real target of pulling universities, pulling academics into this really radical kind of transformational space. Because, I'm sure anyone that's had anything to do with the universities knows that they're very conservative, they're scared, to be seen stepping out of line. But our goal is to really drag them, kicking and screaming, if it takes it, into the space where they're saying 100% plant-based food system and shouting that from the rooftops.
Yes, fabulous. So, Natalie, what's next for Animal Think Tank?
Yeah, we've got a lot going on. One kind of campaign I'm really excited that we're collaborating on is one called the Enforcement Campaign, which is one that's really being led by Animal Equality. And they're doing like unity building, coalition building around this idea that we already have animal rights laws and they're not being enforced. And it's like, well, we can continue pushing for more laws, but what's the point if the current ones aren't currently being enforced? And there is so much like enthusiasm and momentum within the movement behind this. They're really excited to be a part of that. We're collaborating with them on research, like how can we best communicate this that will really resonate with people. So yeah, really excited about that collaboration, and yeah, they're really kind of leading the way with unity building on that campaign. We have lots of like roundtable discussions planned. So Animal Rising are going to be there, We the Free. We're going to be doing ones with NGOs as well. And we also like we're reaching out to people like beyond the movement as well, because we think that's really important, like bringing people into the movement. And like, yeah, Nathan was saying with, the environmental movement, like we can't let our like ideology get in the way of unity building, because a lot of people I think were against that at the time with Animal Rebellion doing this with the environmental movement, and like it's made massive difference. And it's like, why can't we foster like these ties with other movements that, people might think that we don't have that much in common, but actually there's a lot of common ground, and how can we build these connections and actually begin to see we're all part of the same struggle. We might have slightly different visions, different theories of change, different missions, but there's a lot that we can unite behind. So we're really interested in doing that, and just we're big at Animal Think Tank, like seeing ourselves as an ecology and not thinking like, oh, they're doing this way and that's wrong, you should be doing it this way. It's like, it's all needed. We all need to be doing everything from different angles, different approaches, different theories of change. Like, we need that. And then when something huge happens, then we can all join together and get behind that and really kind of come as a unified front.
Oh, it's really interesting, yes. And it's something we're seeing more and more and more. Yeah, worthy. Fabulous. And I'm going to talk to you actually about your research and messaging in a bit. But
yeah.
Sash, I guess NARD is big on the horizon. Are you starting to organise that already for next year?
Yes, that's right. Thank you. Yeah, we will be even bigger and better next year. But that's not the only project that we're working on. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention Open Cages as well. We've got collaborate with them a lot. I see Wendy from Open Cages. So the other project that we will be working on they're already in place, My Stats, and we would like to encourage all the organizations to use it. It's data-specific, data-based, research-based statistics to measure your inspiration rate. And how effective your advocacy is. The other big campaign that we're working on is something called Campaign Builder. Again, I'm not going to tell you a lot about it. We're still working on it. But it will be released soon. And also another big project working with vegan artists as well. It is very, very exciting. I am actually really excited about that project, particularly. And I really like what you said about our personal ideologies getting in the way. This is something that I call subjective veganism, and I think we need to kind of move away from the notion of subjective veganism and promote objective advocacy. And I'm hoping that through collaborations and partnerships, I think partnerships is more kind of a better word for that, we'll be able to promote that. Thank you.
Oh, fabulous. So really exciting to hear of all these things going on. I mean, the vegan artist thing, I didn't know about that. Right up our street, actually, we've been showcasing the Vegan Artists Collective for a number of years. Excessively proud. I'll give a quick plug for our London Vegan Comedy Festival at the end of this month, where we have over 40 vegan artists, comedians, musicians, performers, all coming to do a show, and they are the star of the show. I know all the performers like to be centre stage, and we are making sure they are centre stage, so there'll be no activism talks, no panels, no presentations, just pure and simple vegan artists. So yes. So folks, we're going to come on now to something that's a little bit more tricky, and that is looking at what's holding us back, what's got in the way, what's stopping us. And with any justice movement, it's really important to have critique. The vegan movement and animal movement has been shocking at doing that. In my experience over 40 years, it's been one of the real drawbacks. And I think one of the reasons is because we've got different goals, we've got different strategies. Some of us are dealing with individual change, some of us are dealing with system change. They're different, they require different thought process strategies. And I'll give you a little example of where we as an organisation feel that we're not really on the same page with one or two organisations, but where we feel that we can find common ground and collaborate. And I think this is really important. Instead of arguing with each other and putting each other down, we can disagree, but we can do so respectfully, well thought through. We can articulate that. We can be generous with each other. We can be kind, supportive, but we can still have a different position. And for example, you know, I'm from the sort of Tom Reagan thinking. You know, Tom Reagan was an animal rights philosopher in the 80s who really developed a whole sort of animal rights philosophy. And one of his catchphrases that we may have heard is, you know, we don't want bigger cages, we want empty cages. That means, you know, we want to end the use of animals. We don't want to work on making sure they don't suffer as much or their treatment is better. That's not the issue. The issue is clearly that we use them in the first place, and that's what we have to end. So we find it a bit difficult to support like a welfare campaign that wants to have an increased size of cage for chickens. We don't agree with that, and I'm happy to say that. There's one or two campaigns groups whose really is their sole remit. But that doesn't stop us collaborating on some shared values. So, for example, supporting the plant-based unis is something that both groups can do, whether they're, as it were, abolitionist or welfarist. We can still collaborate. We certainly don't have to argue. We can find common ground and find ways of working together. And that's an example of where I'm more than happy to collaborate with a welfare organisation on getting an increase in plant-based options. We both share those goals, and we can find common ground. So, Fee, I'm going to come to you first. You've been, as a group, Animal Aid, again, I'll say at the forefront of getting over some of these issues, and you've always stayed clear of being critical of others. What are the problems, though, as a national group, that have perhaps either held yourselves back or you see holding other people back from collaborating?
Well, I think there's lots of different things that hold the movement back in general. So if you're looking at different groups, there's different groups that have different goals, different things they want to do, and with that sort of thing, we just need to be really upfront and just talk to them and just say, what can we share, what can we do together, where let's keep talking, let's not get a divorce, it's fine, we can keep going. And to just, initiate new projects and stuff like that. I think, there's no point in pussyfooting around. There was a few years ago, I was very much aware that we had a movement where some groups were very, very guarded about their supporters, and they didn't want to share with other people because they were worried about funding drying up and stuff like that. And I just think, I said this to you the other day when we were speaking. People who think like that have clearly never communicated with anybody on the street and never picked up a telephone, because the number one gripe, anybody on the street, anybody you talk to, is why don't you lot work together? The number one gripe, why don't you lot work together? And they're absolutely right. And if people don't perceive that we're working together, then they might turn their back on us completely. Because that's what they want to see. They want to see us coming together. They want to see us making a change. In terms of people who are on the ground, there's a lot of things that hold us back. We have a draconian police force, which are making it more and more difficult for people to get active, to get out there. They're the government is hell-bent on trying to clamp down on any form of protest, on any form of free speech. It's so difficult for people to come into the movement and find things that they can do where they're not going to end up in a load of trouble. We have a gutter press that are keen to point out when somebody's been a particularly, that they're going to say, oh, this person's a bad vegan mother, but they don't, they're going to just point the finger at people just because it's got the V word in it. It's just, there's a lot of hurdles we have to overcome because especially with the press, they're not really interested in talking about those issues that affect animals. A lot of press want it to stay behind closed doors. It's very, very difficult to get the attention that we need to get for animals out to the mainstream public. It's out to everybody. It's just very, very difficult. So, we work with there are some really good journalists out there. I have to be honest. There's a piece that's been published today which has looked at some animal aid research in Wales, and there's some fantastic journalists out there. Don't get me wrong, but it's there's a lot that aren't very supportive of what we're doing. So it's things like that. It's trying to find ways of getting our message out to everybody, so everybody can see what we're doing and everybody can see what the animals are suffering and everybody can see how, what we can all do to bring about a change, I think.
Okay, thanks, Fee. Nathan, full well that we have to get ourselves together this decade. What do you see holding back some of this collaboration? Where do you see some of the issues lie?
I think that's a really difficult question to pinpoint one thing. I think a lot of it is lots of very small things. But I think one thing that I see across the movement is we're not fully embracing non-violence as a way of life rather than just a strategy. I think this movement was founded in anti-oppression and love for everyone, but we've strayed from that.
Yeah.
And I think it's really difficult to do that, especially when, we do see a world filled with a majority of people who still consume animal products and directly or indirectly contribute to animal suffering. It's really hard to open our hearts to those people. But I think that is absolutely vital, and it's the only way that we will win everyone over. I think what sticks with me is a Martin Luther King quote, I believe, where it's, darkness does not drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate does not drive out hate, only love can do that. And I think as a movement, we really need to start taking non-violence a lot more seriously than we are at the moment.
Absolutely agree. That's a phenomenal. Thank you. I hope some of my colleagues out there are taking note. Yes, indeed. So, Natalie, Animal Think Tank have been doing research. What I'd like to hear a bit about actually is, you've done some research. So some of the language we use can really get in the way, isn't it? And so when we talk about perhaps trying to all work together, the messaging's all over the place at times, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we can come at things from like different angles, but what we're kind of focused on at Animal Think Tank is, are there like common themes and ideas that really do persuade members of the public, and that we can then kind of bring our own style of messaging, but we're all kind of speaking to these deeper themes that really resonate. So that's what we've been kind of focused on researching the past 12 months, and it's ongoing research, and we have found a few narratives that have had like quite a statistical like uplift in people. So the narrative that we found that has like the most positive effect in people is this idea of animal abilities. And we already have this as a narrative within the movement. It's like talking to this idea that animals have the ability to feel, they have the ability to feel community, they have amazing, like, awe-inspiring abilities. It's speaking to all the different amazing facets of who animals are. And we found that really does shift people. So we're already seeing that in the movement, but I guess it's just recognizing what are the persuasive narratives, what are the ones that we really can be lifting up, and also recognizing maybe what are some of the harmful narratives that we don't want to be reinforcing. So, it's not that we all need to be singing from the same hymn sheet, but just that we all, this is Beth's analogy, but we're all kind of using the same hymn book initially. So, kind of getting unity behind the narratives and the ideas that really, we're kind of rooted in our values. And that's, been key to every successful movement.
That's really important. And Natalie, one thing the Animal Think Tank are big on is this concept of shared values, isn't it? And literally in the panel we had with local councillors just 2 hours ago, obviously councillors who've got different political persuasion and such like, we were, and not all of them vegan either. So we were looking at, one aspect which is, food sovereignty. And I know all the councillors there absolutely share that, your concern for the disparity in food distribution, supply and such like. And we could all see that actually growing our own plant-based options through allotments and such like could really solve that issue. So, tapping into shared values is a really important part. And that's something that, again, I'll credit Animal Think Tank and Animal Rising as really bringing to the forefront right now. It's a really valuable.
Can I answer your original question of what I think is kind of holding us back from unity building as well? I think, like, for me, since I joined Animal Think Tank, something that really shifted my thinking was getting away from this idea of, like, welfarism, that is just groups that are just focused on improving welfare, and groups that focus on abolition, and, there's just this divide. And actually understanding, it's just people who are playing the inside game, and that is really needed because we can only achieve incremental change within the inside because that's how it operates. And then there's the outside game, and they're the ones, I guess, the more radical flank that are really pushing for what we believe, and they're not in opposition, they're working together. So they can't work in isolation, they have to work together. So that was like a real light bulb moment for me, and I think that is something that holds us back from collaborating, because we see other groups, if they're welfarists, I don't want to collaborate with them, I'm going to have to dilute my message. And that's not the case. Like, we can still do a abolitionist campaign and be talking to welfare, but just be framing it in a different way. So, just wanted to look
I hear you on that. There's a lot of work done in the USA, actually. I can't remember the names of the people, but it's a good stuff coming out of the USA about reframing that welfare abolition narrative. It's really important to find out where we can work together. Sash, tell us, you had some really brutal opposition to your NARD day. I seem to remember some people were up in arms with what you were planning, and other people were very much in favour. Tell us more about some of the issues you see and how we're going to get over them.
We actually did face quite a lot of objections to how we approach activism on the streets, but it's all about having the dialogue, an open dialogue, and explaining actually where we're going with it usually helps. And for me, and it's been playing on my mind for a long time, and there's two things that I've noticed as it's the definition dilemma in navigating through the complexity of veganism, and I think it's the fluctuating interpretation of veganism based on individual circumstances, I think creates barriers. So I think we need to define, I'm not saying redefine it, I mean, it's quite a big subject, a topic to talk about, so it's not for today, but it's just one of those things that I think of. And I think that's one of the barriers. And the other one is unregulated nature of veganism, and addressing the flaws with that is this complete absence of substantial regulations within the vegan movement, and that also creates the barriers. Again, it's quite a strong and heavy subject, and it's probably not for here, but it's one of those that very close to heart. And whilst we're on the subject of language, is like a personal story that I wanted to share. I'm a blood donor. And so I've been personally harshly criticized by some vegans, fellow vegans that we stand on the street with, for giving blood. And I actually want to quote, and I'm sorry if it might upset somebody, you would be doing animals a favor by killing yourselves. If you disagree with this view, you are a human supremacist. So this kind of language has a negative impact on vegan movement, and we are losing activists because of that. And we the Free, as other organizations, through collaborations, hopefully we will sort of revive street activism that has been not necessarily, fading. That I would say. Dr. Melanie Joy actually has done a lot of research on that, where she actually does lectures on infighting, and it costs a lot of money to the movement. It takes away funding, it takes away energy, and it takes away valuable resources from the movement. And this is something that I think we need to be mindful of. So thank you.
Thank you, folks. So, yes, indeed. Just recently, I'm just going to use a little example, actually, and I'm just going to do something I don't usually do, which is big myself up here, which is a rare thing, I'm sure, Fayre, you know that. I don't ever do that. But recently, the National Animal Rights March, very interesting. So Animal Rising organised it. They put a name on it, the Animals and Nature March. Some of my colleagues from my era objected to that, put a rival march on the same day from a different start point and called it the Animal Rights March. And then, of course, Animal Rising didn't want to do it anymore for very good reasons. And so we had the situation where, I've got to be honest, I was pretty upset, and I did let my colleagues who organised that march know in no uncertain terms where I stood with it. And I will be clear, I was disgusted at the treatment of Animal Rising and supported Animal Rising 100%. What I said to them is, you just go and put a march on 6 months ahead or 6 months apart. You know, you can still do your thing, but don't put Animal Rising out. But having made my point, then I got behind the march, and we had, a lot of the groups there, and I'm an animal rights advocate, and I want to see that march succeed. So although I had my differences with them, I didn't hold a grudge, as it were. I made my point, and then we got behind the march. And what I'd like people to do more of is get over your differences. Don't keep grinding them out and going after people and telling them how awful you are. If you don't agree with something, that's okay. You can make your point, but then you can get behind things and see the bigger picture. And I think one of the big faults of our movement is that we haven't always done that. And we've got too many people who just want to argue and moan and go after each other instead of getting on the same page and, trying to make this world vegan. So I think there's some real lessons there, and I think that, some of the younger up-and-coming activists are really pushing for this, and I think we've seen this on this panel. So we're nearly out of time. First of all, I'm going to say thank you to our panel, and secondly, to say we're going to carry on the conversation over the next, few shows. We'll be doing more of these. I'll be inviting you all back in 2.5 months at London to come and see where we are. But I'm going to be clear that, one of the things we need to be is solutions-based. So it's one thing to have critique. It's one thing to raise concerns. But the logical step is then to find the solutions. Excuse me. So I'm just going to put forward 2 solutions to this and try and help. One, we looked at collaboration, but one thing that's lacking is any coordination. So we're not coordinating these collaborations as well as we could do. So a solution to that is, first of all, we're going to aim to create a new website that is going to be for activists to post up. So someone like Jessie, who's got this fabulous campaign, can go on, post it up, let people know. We can all tap into that and see that and can get behind that campaign easily. We can get petitions out, we can get demos out, we can get protests out, we can get outreach out and about. So we're going to try and come up with that as a bit of a solution to help all the groups coordinate better. But the second thing I'm putting forward there really here is a very quick route map. And I'm suggesting that we should pick 5 or 6 key moments in the animal and plant-based calendar and then really get behind. So all these groups have got really good campaigns. We saw it happen at Aintree. Animal Rising led that. But, you know, Viva and Animal Aid both have really strong horse campaigns. And that you were rolling out those campaigns at the same time. So we saw them on social media. Hunt Sabs got involved, Merseyside Animal Rights Group. There was a really good collaboration there. We could really pick that next year and really focus on animals being used for entertainment and broaden that for the shooting, the snares, fishing, hunting, circuses, as well as horse racing, greyhound racing, and really have a month where we focus on that. You know, and then maybe a couple of months later, we could be looking at animals in laboratories. So, you know, World Day for Animals in Laboratories in 24th of April, I think it is another key time. And for a month, we could all be really focusing on that as groups. We've got our individual campaigns. You know, we can really complement each other and promote really the optics of a united movement. There's the National Animal Rights March in September the 7th next year. Now, we could really get behind that. We could really talk about rights. So what does animal rights really mean? What do we mean by animal rights? We could spend the whole of August having those discussions, really highlighting the fact that, you know, animals have a right not to be commodified and present a really united message on that. There's clearly, you know, COP29 or COP28 next, but the next year will be COP29. That's the time to really focus on the environmental impact of animal agriculture. And that leads nicely into December, where we could really be pushing to get people signed up for Veganuary, celebrating all the wonderful plant-based options we've got. There's also animals used for clothing. So at some point, maybe, I don't know, London Fashion Week or something, we could be really getting around and focusing on that. And it costs us nothing. And we could all complement each other. But if we think about the optics, and we've got all the groups, all the media, all those conversations around those issues at the same time, we almost by definition become a mass movement. So that's a second solution. So that's what I'm going to end on this panel, except to say that I'm going to ask all of our groups here to have a think about that one and see what you think. And let's see come November if we can really come up with A, some more solutions, and B, activate those solutions. So, folks, I'm going to wrap up now. We've got some entertainment coming. We've got a very talented singer-songwriter about to play. We're nearly on 4 o'clock. Just to say, though, in my opinion, this is the most exciting time in the animal movement for the last 50 years. We're seeing the collaborations, we're seeing the research, we're seeing the adults in the room really taking hold of this. And all I can do is encourage everybody to really get on this tip. Let's collaborate, and let's really look at how we're working together and see if we can just do a bit better for the animals. Thank you very much. Hey, folks.